Would you trust a kid to fix a meltdown your entire tech department couldn't untangle? Now think about this. What if that kid never even got the chance to set foot in a classroom? While most 8-year-olds were out playing soccer or learning how to multiply by sevens, I was sitting quietly on a beat-up bench in the corner of Linkcore Systems' sleek marble lobby. My legs dangled above the floor, too short to reach, and my eyes were locked on the frayed pages of an old notebook, the one stuffed with strange diagrams and sketches no one ever understood but me. I wasn't supposed to be there. I never was. My mom, Rosa Reyes, worked the overnight shift cleaning the same shining floors where men in custom suits whispered billion-dollar ideas and tossed them aside just as fast. Every night, she'd swipe her ID at the security desk, barely getting a nod. I'd follow behind her, quiet as a shadow. Unseen, unimportant. But that morning, everything changed. It began with a flicker, then a sharp hiss, then total black. At exactly 6:17 a.m., every screen in the west wing of Linkcore went dark. Security monitors, server nodes, dead. No alerts, no backups, just a wall of silence. Then the panic hit. Engineers came flooding in like ants from a busted nest. Faces pale, phones glued to ears, voices climbing with fear. It's a total breach, inside and out. Firewalls are toast. DNS won't respond. One of the receptionists, usually calm like a machine, ripped off her headset and slammed it onto her desk. "We're locked out," she snapped. "This isn't a glitch. It's deliberate. Precise." I didn't move a muscle. Just sat there, arms wrapped tight around my backpack like it might disappear if I let go. I'd seen something like this once. Not in real life. On an underground tech channel I wasn't supposed to watch. They showed breach drills, root shell takeovers, simulated hacks that made my skin prickle. But this wasn't a simulation. This was happening. For real. I opened my notebook slowly, hands shaking, not from fear, but something else. A kind of buzzing readiness. My pencil hovered over the page. My thoughts started moving fast. Somewhere near the front desk, I heard the CTO bark. "Try restarting the local servers, manually." A voice shot back. "We already did." Nothing. No progress. DNS was still frozen solid. Someone muttered it might be an intentional injection, surgical, precise. Then, out of nowhere, a phrase popped into my head like lightning cracking through clouds. Socket overflow loop. It was something I'd seen once in a grainy tutorial. One of those nerdy videos my cousin Evan downloaded and played by flashlight on his beat-up laptop. The kind of stuff you weren't supposed to understand unless you had a PhD or zero social life. But I remembered it, and my eyes narrowed. I knew better than to speak up. Rule 1 when you're invisible? Stay that way. Don't talk. Don't stand out. Just vanish. But something in me didn't listen that time. My hand rose before I even realized it. I stood up slowly, my voice just above a whisper. "Did anyone check the overflow loop?" Silence. Every conversation in the room stopped cold. Heads turned like I'd shouted. The air got thick, like it was holding its breath. One guy near the front scoffed. "Jesus, who let the kid in?" Another rolled his eyes and grumbled. "Security, we've got a breach and a babysitter now." But then, someone else noticed. A young guy standing near the back didn't laugh. He couldn't have been much older than a college intern. His badge said Jonah Park. He didn't smirk. He didn't dismiss me. He studied me, like I was a line of code he hadn't figured out yet. And then he said the last thing anyone expected. "Her question makes sense." The room went completely still again. My face flushed. I wanted to disappear into my hoodie, pretend I hadn't said anything at all. But Jonah was already pulling a chair over, gently nudging it in my direction. "The terminals are a little high," he said in a calm, quiet voice. "You'll need a boost." And here's the wildest part. No one stopped me. Because at that point, they were out of options. I stepped up onto the chair, clutching my notebook like it was armor. My eyes locked on the blinking terminal. A tangled mess of failed scripts, corrupted admin shells, and login errors piled on top of each other. But I knew this interface. Not from school. Not from training. I knew it from gutting old towers left in alleyways. From sorting through busted wires and scavenged boards behind neighbors' trash bins. I knew it from hours and hours spent solving puzzles no one ever taught me to read. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Not shaky, not scared, just calculating. I typed one line, then another. And right then, something blinked on screen that hadn't shown up for anyone else. A prompt window. Gasps echoed around me. Pins clicked. Mouths went still. Jonah leaned in, eyes wide. "Did you just open the root override?" he whispered. I didn't answer. I was already inside the shell. I wasn't guessing. I wasn't fumbling. I was remembering. This wasn't book knowledge. It was survival knowledge. The kind you build alone, in the dark, with broken motherboards and scavenged radios and no one to explain a damn thing. In the far corner of the room, behind a glass wall, someone had just stepped into view. Tall. Still. Arms crossed like concrete. That was Malcolm Drake, CEO of Linkcore Systems. He stared through the glass with the expression of a man who'd watched empires collapse, yet somehow, this moment shocked him more. Because sitting in front of his blinking system, with duct-taped glasses and beat-up sneakers, was a little girl tearing through firewalls his entire team couldn't crack. He leaned toward his assistant and asked, real low, "Who is she?" The assistant stammered, clearly panicking. She's the janitor's daughter. Rosa Reyes. Night shift. That's her kid." Langston's eyes narrowed, sharp as glass. "Run a background check," he ordered. "But sir," his assistant started, but he was already turning back toward the glass. I stayed focused on the terminal, fingers dancing across the keys. Commands flew by. Access points opened like doors finally giving up their secrets. And then, I stopped. What I saw didn't look like random chaos. It wasn't just scrambled code or sloppy sabotage. It was intentional, precise, almost elegant, like someone had signed their name in wires. And I recognized it. My heart stuttered. I'd seen that exact structure before, years ago, in a corrupted file I'd pulled from a hacker forum Evan once showed me. It had fascinated me, obsessed me, really. I copied it into my notebook, page after page, trying to understand the mind behind it. Because it felt like mine. Whoever created this virus, they thought like me. And that realization chilled me more than anything I'd seen so far. Let me ask you something straight. Do you think a child could ever outsmart a whole team of professional engineers? Yes or no? Because in that moment, I wasn't just holding my own. I was digging deeper. My fingers moved faster, the terminal lighting up like a storm in real time. I was going so fast Jonah had to lean in just to make sure I was still typing and not just floating. Behind me, the whole West Wing ops room had shifted from polished calm to pure anxiety. People weren't working anymore. They were watching, holding their breath, rooting for a kid with duct tape on her glasses. Up on the overhead screens, the endless stream of access denied messages finally started to sputter, then slow, then completely freeze. It was like the virus itself had stopped moving, like it was waiting to see what I would do next. Behind the glass wall, Malcolm Drake still hadn't moved. His jaw was tight, his expression locked. He could have pulled the trigger right then, sent in one of the elite response teams Link Corps kept on standby for cyber attacks. SWAT-grade stuff. They had 3, last I heard. But he didn't. Maybe something in him hesitated. Maybe he was remembering something else, some courtyard in New Mexico, decades ago. A little girl, crouched over a busted radio, rebuilding it like her life depended on it. Back then, he'd walked away. Progress didn't have time for miracles from forgotten kids and hand-me-downs. But now? Now the miracle was standing in his lobby, wearing second-hand sneakers, and rewriting the future he thought money alone could protect. I took a deep breath, like I'd been holding it for hours. "There's more than one lock," I said, voice low but steady. "This thing was built to make you quit after the first layer." I tapped out a sequence of commands, hesitated for half a second, then added quietly. "They're counting cycles. In 3S. Mrs. Halberd, silver-haired, brilliant, and always cool under pressure, lifted her head. "Cycles of 3? I nodded, still staring at the screen. "The exploit rebuses every 3th system heartbeat. That's why your backups kept reinfecting, every rollback hit the same poison timestamp." Mr. Calloway, usually full of snide remarks, just blinked. His sarcasm vanished. "How did we miss that?" Jonah shot him a look without turning his head. "Don't answer. Just learn." I scribbled a checksum string into my notebook, pure habit. Not because I had to. Right then, the screen flashed again. A new line of text scrolled across in stark white letters. "Hello, stranger." 3 words. Black background. And just like that, the air in the room turned colder by a full degree. My pencil froze midair. A new message popped up on the terminal. "You're not supposed to be here." My heart pounded so loud I could barely hear anything else. This wasn't just leftover malware bouncing around the system. The person who built the virus was still on the other end, watching me. In real time, they were tracking every key I hit. Behind the glass, Richard snapped around toward his assistant. "Cut all external traffic to this subnet. Now." Julian Price, nervous and fumbling, grabbed a tablet and started tapping. "Sir, it's not that simple. They've tunneled directly into our physical infrastructure. If we pull the plug, we could lose half the production nodes." Richard gripped the door frame so hard his knuckles turned white, but he didn't move. He knew. This had to be finished my way. So I typed 3 words. "Why 3 heartbeats?" I waited, counted under my breath. 1, 2, 3. 3. The cursor blinked once. Then a reply appeared. "Some of us count the silence." I swallowed hard. That line, those words, they felt pulled straight from my own past. From all those long nights spent next to Evan, stealing power from busted outlets. While Mom scrubbed floors upstairs, I sat with half-dead radios and broken boards, listening to the faint hum of electricity. And I learned something out there in the quiet. Broken things still make music, if you listen close enough. I straightened my shoulders. "They're baiting me," I whispered. Jonah leaned closer. "Then don't bite. Trace them. Cut their line." I hesitated. If I shut them out, they'll wipe everything. But if I keep them talking. I looked at him. "You can track their location." Mrs. Halberd jumped in, her voice suddenly sharp with hope. "She's right. If we want a shot at catching this thing, we need live access. I gave a quick nod. We'll need a full sandbox. Physical isolation. Max throttling. A decoy setup that mirrors production, down to the bite. Mr. Calloway glanced at Jonah, like he needed permission to take orders from an 8-year-old. But Jonah didn't hesitate. He rolled up his sleeves and said, "Move the dev cluster to Vault 3. Ghost prods headers. I'll handle segmentation." And just like that, the room came alive. For the first time since the power died, everyone had purpose again. Cables flew. Towers roared awake. Servers groaned back to life. I didn't budge. My fingers tapped a steady rhythm as I led the intruder deeper into the fake system, our little trap disguised to look like the real thing. Then another message flickered on screen. "You're quiet, little one." I didn't even blink. I typed back, "Quiet makes room for thunder." From across the room, I caught Richard's eyes through the glass. There was something in them I hadn't seen before. Not just awe, maybe pride. He didn't say a word, but reached up and tapped a control panel on the wall. In an instant, licenses, CPU cycles, storage, and even security overrides were granted, just like that. He didn't care what the board would say tomorrow. Tonight belonged to the girl who wouldn't stay invisible. Time stretched out. Minutes dragged like hours. And slowly, bit by bit, our trap started to form. I built mirrored directory trees. We fed in dummy API keys. Loaded the sandbox with fake customer data. Every time the attacker poked around, Jonah's system redirected them, deeper and deeper into the fake environment, further away from our actual core. Until finally, every trace of hostile traffic was running through a set stage. An empty shell dressed up like the real world. A playground for ghosts. The terminal pinged again. Clever. But why are you helping them? I froze. Not my hands, just my thoughts. Why was I helping them? Link Court didn't even know I existed yesterday. They never saw my name. Never cared that my mom scrubbed their restrooms while their executives brainstormed behind glass walls. And now here I was, defending the very system that never invited me in. I thought about typing the truth. Because if I don't, someone like you might think we're all broken. But I didn't send that. Instead, I let the code speak for me. I launched a recursive loop, one designed to freeze their session in place. And in the same breath, I triggered a traceroute. In Vault 3, the map came alive. I watched as the packets leapt across the globe. From Alder Ridge to Boston, overseas to Helsinki, and back again, landing finally in rural New Mexico. It stopped cold inside an old fiber hub just 10 miles from a place I recognized. Briar Creek home. My chest tightened. I checked the coordinates again, heart pounding. Same location, right down to the dirt road. Behind me, Richard sucked in a sharp breath. "Show me," he said. His voice cracked. Jonah tapped a few keys, and the map stretched across the big screen. Red hollow blinked on the display like a flare in the dark. Mrs. Halberd turned to Richard, confused. "You know that place?" He opened his mouth, but no words came at first. Finally, barely audible, he said, "I grew up there." A ripple of silence moved through the room. I looked back at the console. The attacker hadn't said anything for a while. But now, new text appeared. And this time, it wasn't mocking. It was personal. I didn't choose destruction. It chose me, when you didn't. Richard went pale. That's when I knew. This wasn't just a hacker. This was someone tied to him. Someone from his past. Julian Price, still holding his tablet, whispered, "Sir, did you leave someone behind?" Richard rubbed his face, shoulders heavy. There was a girl, younger than me, could fix radios better than most grown-ups. I left before they could place me. She didn't. Mrs. Halberd leaned in gently. What was her name? He shook his head, voice brittle. We didn't know it. Everyone just called her Cricket, because she hummed while she worked. A chill ran through me. Short lines. Strange spacing. The rhythm of the attacker's code. It felt like humming turned into text. I took a deep breath, then typed one word. Cricket. I counted. 1, 2, 3. 3. Then yes. I closed my eyes. She was real. Another orphan with lightning in her blood. But where I'd found a little light, Ren had been left in the dark too long. Long enough to let the bitterness take root. She'd watched Richard rise to fame. Forbes covers, IPOs, interviews with smiling reporters. While she stayed in the shadows, learning how to break what others took for granted. Jonah leaned closer, voice soft. How do we stop her, without setting off whatever she's wired in there? I stared at the blinking prompt. My mind wasn't on the code anymore, not fully. It drifted to Mom, kneeling on cold tile floors while the world walked right past her. To Evan, burning his fingertips trying to fix a busted solder joint. To Richard, standing behind layers of glass that were too thick for empathy. And I thought, this is what happens when pain has no witness. When no one's listening. So I typed, "I see you now." Nothing. But I was already too late. The sandbox monitor spiked. Ren had realized we'd boxed her in, and she launched a full thermal wipe. Overloaded the fake drives until the metal warped and hissed. It wouldn't touch production, thankfully. But once the session died, we'd lose her trail. No way to follow the signal. No way to reach her again. I had maybe 75 seconds left. Richard leaned toward me, Voice hushed. Can you send her something? A message? I nodded slowly. And I did more than send a message. I opened the decoy channel and began streaming a data burst, a compressed file packed with everything I'd ever scribbled in my old notebook. There were radio schematics made from junk parts, code snippets with notes in my messy, sideways handwriting, photos Jonah had taken of my wild little circuit trees, even a scratchy voice memo Evan once recorded, me laughing after we got a broken fan to spin again. I wrapped it all together. Proof that genius could grow quietly in the dark, without turning cruel. And I named it crickets_song.zip. Then hit send. The sandbox temperature soared and flatlined. One by one, the dummy drives shut down with a soft hiss. The terminal screen faded. The session was gone. Vault 3 went dark. No alarms. No damage. Just quiet. I stepped down from the chair, legs wobbling beneath me. All around me, the engineers let out a single breath, one long, shaky exhale, like the whole room had been underwater and was finally coming up for air. Jonah reached out and caught my elbow before I could topple over. Mr. Calloway cleared his throat, voice steady again. Prod environment's clean. All nodes stable. Mrs. Halberd smiled, a real smile this time, soft and teary, and rushed off to bring customer systems back online. Julian Price leaned toward Richard and murmured, the board's going to want a full statement by morning. But Richard wasn't listening. He was looking at me, really looking, eyes glassy, haunted, like someone who just met a ghost. He knelt down until we were eye to eye. If she's still out there, he said, voice breaking, what you sent might be the only kindness she's known in decades. I shrugged under his gaze, shy but firm. Sometimes, you fix things by showing what they could have been. He sucked in a breath, then held out his hand. Didn't force it. So I placed my small, sweaty hand into his. And in that one handshake, it felt like two worlds, corporate boardrooms and dusty orphanage roads, finally met in the middle. Jonah watched us, eyes wide, jaw tight. The hum in the room softened. For the first time, it felt warm. Outside, the sun crept over the skyline of Alder Ridge. Generators powered down. Elevators chimed like morning birds. The world would never know how close it came to full-blown digital collapse, or that its savior was now yawning, already dreaming about pancakes and sleep. I looked over at Jonah, grinning. Think Evan's still flipping flapjacks? He laughed, full of giddy relief. If he's smart, he saved you the biggest one. We were halfway to the exit when Richard called after us, his voice finally steady. Mina, I owe you more than thanks. Stay, build with us, on your terms. I turned around, eyes wide but bright. Can I keep breaking stuff first? He smiled, really smiled this time. As long as you show us how to put it all back together. I nodded. Once. Sure and solid. Then I turned and walked through the security doors. The same ones that used to beep if I even got too close. This time, they opened for me. No alarms. No permission needed. Just open. Before I go on, let me ask you something. If you discovered a hidden genius quietly fixing the world you broke, would you fight to keep her in the shadows? Or would you hand her every tool she needs to shine? Yes or no? What's your answer? The months after that moved like a slow tide, softly erasing everything we thought was permanent. The same executives who once ignored my existence? Now they knew my name, Mina Reyes. And they greeted me every morning as I stepped off the same city bus with my mom. It still smelled like diesel and cinnamon buns. Only now, Mom didn't mop the marble floors anymore. Richard made sure she got a facilities coordinator role, same building, better pay, normal hours. Took some convincing. She didn't want charity. But he told her it wasn't charity. It was recognition. Way overdue. As for me, that lonely loner tower I used to sit at, it turned into a full workstation, right in the advanced systems lab. They gave me the glass corner. Cables everywhere. Shelves stacked with broken gadgets I rescued from the recycling bin like stray animals. The engineers tiptoed around my sketches like museum curators, careful not to smudge the pencil markings. To them, it wasn't scrap. It was live circuitry in hieroglyph form. Then came that Friday. Gray sky. Nervous air. The boardroom buzzed with a kind of energy Richard said he hadn't felt since Linkor's IPO. Today, I was scheduled to demo a prototype I'd been working on. We called it Silent Mesh. It was a self-healing network, designed to defend itself during a cyber attack by splitting into thousands of whispering, shifting shards. If it worked, Linkcore would leap years ahead of its competition. If it failed, well, some of them might start thinking the kid genius was just a fluke. Richard paced behind the glass wall, looking like part mentor, part nervous dad. You could tell, he wasn't just betting on the tech. He was betting on me. I walked in without any theatrics. No flash, no intro. Just me and my backpack. I set it down on the polished oak conference table and pulled out the prototype. A tiny constellation of hand-soldered boards powered by matchbook-sized batteries. Evan jogged in behind me, carrying our grocery bag full of spare parts and tools. He grinned at the board members like we'd just walked into a science fair. I connected the final jumper wire, then looked up at Richard for a silent go-ahead. He gave me the slightest nod. I flipped the switch. Around the table, the execs blinked as their tablets lost Wi-Fi. Just for half a heartbeat. Then every signal came back, stronger than before. The silent mesh didn't just work. It took over their network, rewired it in real time, and then erased every trace of itself the moment the tunnel locked in. You could hear a tiny round of applause ripple across the boardroom, hesitant, but real. Mrs. Halberd pulled up the diagnostics on her console and let out a low whistle. Zero packet loss. Zero latency, she said, almost in awe. Richard let out the breath he'd clearly been holding since I walked in. You could actually see the tension slide off his shoulders like someone had finally turned off the pressure valve. I wasn't some headline stunt anymore. He knew it. They all knew it. I wasn't here for show. I was the foundation of LinkCore's second act. But even with that buzz in the room, my eyes kept drifting back to the streaming log, floating above the table. That's when I saw it. A single line of cobalt blue text rolled across the screen. Still counting the silence, little sister. My heart jumped. Cricket. She was still out there. Still watching. Only Richard and I understood the message. We locked eyes. No words. We both knew what had to happen. It was time to finish what had been left open for too long. That night, we headed west, past Alder Ridge, into the dry edge of nowhere, where old fiber maps ended and the land was mostly redacted. Evan sat in the back seat, navigating with a beat-up atlas that had coffee stains and torn corners. Mom was in the passenger seat, twisting her hands, confused why we were chasing down a ghost who'd nearly torched the company from the inside. The road narrowed, first to gravel, then to hard-packed dirt. Eventually, we stopped near a dry creek bed. There it was. A collapsed little comm hut, its satellite dish riddled with bullet holes like freckles. I stepped out first, walking slowly. She's routing traffic through here, I said, pressing my palm gently to the cracked outer wall, like I was listening for a pulse. Richard followed with a flashlight, sweeping it across the inside. The floor was littered with busted circuit boards, scattered like park confetti. Suddenly, a battery-powered monitor flickered on. Code rolled across the screen. Then shifted. A webcam feed blinked into life. There she was. A woman in her early 30s, hair pulled back, face lit by the pale glow of another dark room. Improvised. Fragile, but steady. She looked right at Richard with eyes that said she'd rehearsed this moment in her head for years. You left, she whispered through the tiny speaker. No letter. No promise. Richard's voice was cracked, tired. I was 16, and terrified. That's not an excuse. It's just the truth. I ran. I moved closer and gently placed my prototype down beside the monitor. You built something beautiful, I told her. Then wired it for revenge. I rewired it for trust. I looked up. We can share it, if you want. For a moment, her face didn't change. But then something in her eyes softened. Not convinced, but curious. Mom stepped up behind me, placing her hand on my shoulder, proud and shaking all at once. Evan, wide-eyed, raised his screwdriver, like a quiet salute across time and space. Richard exhaled slowly, then stepped forward. Come back with us, he said. Join the lab you should have had from the beginning. No charges. No interrogation. Just build. The feed glitched for a second. Then I saw it. A tear sliding down Cricket's cheek. She wiped it away quickly, like emotions were some kind of corrupted file she still didn't know how to debug. I don't need your mercy, she said. But there wasn't any venom in her voice. Just something raw and tired. I need proof, she whispered. That this world has space for people who count the silence. I reached for silent mesh and held it up, its tiny wires catching the dim light like silver rivers. Then help us widen that space. She didn't say anything right away. The screen blinked once, then again, and just like that, the connection went dark. For one aching moment, I thought she'd walked away, that it was over. Then I felt my backpack vibrate. A new file had appeared on my tablet. Crickets_song_response.zip. Richard let out a breath that sounded like relief and regret all at once. Evan hooped like we'd just won the Super Bowl. Mom, she started to cry. But me? I just smiled. That quiet, stubborn kind of smile. The kind that feels like light sneaking into a place that forgot what morning looks like. Because whatever came next, the conversation had begun. And sometimes, that's all it takes to rewrite the ending. A few weeks later, LinkCore unveiled Project Quietar, a bold, strange new joint venture led by three of the unlikeliest engineers. Me, Jonah, and a mysterious remote contributor the media dubbed only CS. Investors called it disruptive. Richard called it redemption. And my mom, she said it was the first time she'd ever had a reason to ride the morning bus in sunlight instead of darkness. On launch day, I walked into the lab early, pinned something on the corkboard. It was my old notebook page, the one with the faded heartbeat cycle written in pencil, 3 beats per loop. And I wanted every newcomer to see it. Because on top of the page, I'd written a message I still believe. Quiet makes room for thunder. Now it's your turn. Did my journey make you believe that hidden brilliance can break through even the coldest systems? If it moved you, even a little, type 222 in the comments. Tell us what country you're watching from. And if you know someone with brilliance the world hasn't seen yet, share the story with them. Because no one deserves to be invisible forever.